The medieval era, also known as the Middle Ages, lasted roughly from the 5th to the late 15th century, between the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the beginning of the Renaissance. This is time of feudal system, knights and chivalry, the church power, castles and kingdoms, wars and conflicts, and many weird things. During the medieval era, people ate many strange and unusual foods, especially by today's standards. Some of these foods were eaten out of necessity, while others were considered delicacies for the rich. In today's video, we will look at some strange foods that were common in medieval times. But before I start, if you are new to the channel and love history, definitely subscribe to the History Facts Show and press the bell icon. Thank you. In the medieval era, people ate a variety of birds, including swan, peacock, and crane, especially at royal feasts and banquets. Swans were reserved for kings, queens, and nobles. In England, swans were owned by the monarchy, and only special people had permission to eat them. The most famous dish was swan pie, where the meat was cooked inside a pastry. Peacocks were served at grand feasts and special celebrations. They were considered a symbol of wealth and beauty. The most famous preparation was roasting the peacock and then putting his feathers back on for decoration. Some medieval chefs even set the bird on fire before serving it to amaze guests. Peacock was also sometimes boiled and made into pies. Cranes were mainly eaten by rich nobles and knights. They were often hunted for sport and then cooked. Cranes were usually roasted or boiled. But why did people eat these birds? Only rich people could afford rare birds like swan and peacock, so it make a social status. Feasts were not just about food, but also about impressing guests like a little entertainment. And also, in medieval times, cows and chickens were often kept for milk and eggs, so large birds became a substitute for meat. By the 16th and 17th century, people stopped eating swans, peacocks, and cranes because they were too tough and not tasty compared to chickens and turkeys. Laws protected swans, making it illegal for most people to eat them, and the Renaissance changed food taste, and people prefer softer, more flavorable meat. During the medieval era, people in Europe, especially nobles and the church, ate porpoise and whale meat. Only the rich could afford these meats. Porpoise and whale were seen as a status symbol. The medieval Catholic Church has strict rules about fasting days when meat from land animals like beef or pork was forbidden. But because whales and porpoise lived in water, they were classified as fish and could be eaten during Lent and other fasts. Countries like England, France, and Scandinavia had access to whales and porpoise from the North Atlantic and North Sea. Fresh whales or porpoise meat was roasted or boiled with spices. Whale meat was often salted and stored for winter. A famous medieval recipe where porpoise meat was boiled and served with almond milk and spices. By the 16th and 17th centuries, whale and porpoise meat became less popular because overhunting made them harder to find. New foods like turkey and better preserved meats became available, and people found other meats tastier and less oily. Eating roasted rats might sound strange today, but in medieval era, it was sometimes a necessary food source, especially during times of famine, war, and plague. Rats were easy to catch, cooked quickly, and provided protein when other food was scarce. In times of war, enemy forces would surrender castles and towns, cutting off food supplies. Trapped people would eat rats, dogs, cats, and even leather to survive. The poorest people, especially in overcrowded cities, sometimes had no access to fresh meat and ate wherever they could find. If someone had to eat a rat, they would try to make it taste better by cooking it in different ways, like simply roasting over a fire, boiling in soups or stews, and cooking with spices and herbs. In medieval England, eel pie was a common and popular food, especially among people living near rivers. Eels were an important food source because they were easy to catch, nutritious, and available year-round. Rivers and streams in England were full of eels. People could trap those using woven baskets or nets. Eels could be dried, smoked, or salted, making them last longer without spoiling. Medieval eel pies were savory, hearty dishes with a thick crust. Eel pies were enjoyed by both peasants and nobles. The difference was that wealthy people added expensive spices like saffron, while poorer people used simpler seasonings. Eel pies remained popular for centuries and influenced later British dishes. Even in the 18th and 19th centuries, eel pies and jellied eels were common in London's working class areas, especially in the East End. Snake and lizard stew was not a common dish in most of Europe, but it was eaten in certain regions, especially where food was scarce or where reptiles were part of local traditions. Poor people in drought, prone or desert regions might have eaten snakes and lizards when other foods were scarce. Since medieval cooking depended on what was available, snake and lizard stew recipes varied by region. Since meat preservation was difficult, fresh snake and lizard were cooked immediately, or the meat was dried and stored for later. Wealthy nobles usually did not eat snake or lizard stew. They had access to expensive meats like venison, pork, and beef. However, in some parts of the world, exotic foods were considered a delicacy, so a noble might eat snake if it was seen as a rare or prestigious. While most medieval Europeans avoided eating reptiles, snake and lizard stew remained part of traditional diets in some cultures. Today, similar dishes still exist in parts of Asia, Africa, and the other Americas, where snake soup or grilled lizard is eaten for nutrition and tradition. Eating cats was not a normal or preferred choice for food, but in some situations, people did eat them. In times of famine, when traditional meat was unavailable, people turned to whatever they could find, including stray or domesticated cats. When cats were eaten, they were often roasted, stewed, or baked. Although some people ate cats, many in medieval Europe considered it taboo or even bad luck, because in some cultures, cats were thought to be magical or even the companions of witches. Eating them might bring a curse. Some Christian communities discourage eating cats because they were not seen as clean animals like sheep or cows. People believe killing a cat could bring bad fortune, disease, or death. However, there are a few historical records of some medieval cooks trying to make it more appetizing by seasoning it heavily or soaking it in wine. Medieval food varied greatly depending on social class, region, and availability of ingredients. The wealthy feasted on elaborate meals, while peasants had a simpler diet. So, how did you like today's video? Don't forget to comment and let us know what other historical food topic you want to know. See you with another video. Stay tuned.